Hi everyone. So our group project was the Carousel of Kindness. Our goal with this project was to display to kids some historical figures that spread kindness in a variety of ways, whether it was through animals, whether it was through acts of generosity or acts of servitude. My portion of the project was with Keanu Reeves. I chose Keanu Reeves because he's a exemplary actor who donated a lot of his money when filming The Matrix to the special effects crew for their acts of servitude in making the movie. Not only that, he also donated part of his salary in the form of Harley Davidsons to them, thanks to their efforts in making the movie. A lot of the kids really enjoyed learning more about Keanu Reeves in that aspect, as well as his acts of generosity towards donating to charity. And they also liked it even more when I explained to them that he voiced Shadow in the new Sonic the Hedgehog movie. They also liked hearing more about how he was very generous to the homeless as well. They thought that it was very interesting that an actor was very humble enough to do that for their community.
All right, so my part of the project was on Mr. Rogers. Now, this, I will be honest, was a little disheartening to have kids that had no idea who Mr. Rogers was. I grew up watching him and hearing his messages, so it was a little disappointing to hear that for me personally. Now, for an act of kindness, Mr. Rogers is almost second to none. He's given lots of help and assistance to children all around the world. He's helped countless children get through really rough parts of their life, such as death, divorce, and everything else. He broke down a lot of barriers too. We didn't put it in our part, but he helped break down some color barriers at a time when a lot of people weren't allowed to socialize with one another. Um, when it comes to having someone like Mr. Rogers in our project, it really brought out a lot of different experiences for a lot of students. I would say a lot of teachers probably knew who he was before any student was or knew who he was. Um, and there was one student that said, "Oh yeah, my dad watched Mr. Rogers." So there's some connection there, but for the most part, a lot of students didn't know who he was, and I feel like that kind of taught them who he was. Some kids knew who all of our other figures were, but it wasn't a very um, combined knowledge. A lot of students didn't know who he was, but I feel like after the end of this, showing a lot of different examples of his kindness, and especially with including a lot of quotes of these historical figures, I think we'll have a better result when it comes to having all of them, having students localize and understand the issues and what they spoke. So one of the key parts about speaking about Mr. Rogers was how he used. We didn't put this into there, but a lot of Mr. Rogers hated TV, and he was the one of the world's greatest TV hosts. He hated the very idea of TV when he first saw it, and he decided to change everything about that. How do you use the TV to educate and guide people into good parts in their lives? That was Mr. Rogers right there. Nobody will ever probably get to that level and that ability of caring and compassion because Mr. Rogers, he wrote to fans, he wrote to everyone that could ask of him. And even after his death, his guides are still being used today.
So for my part of the project, we chose Steve Irwin. Now, when you're doing a kindness project on famous people from history, it would be pretty remiss of us not to include Steve Irwin, the person who taught everyone to be kind to animals, from little dogs and cats to alligators and tigers and anything that can and will kill you. He was also pretty good about teaching people how to take care of the environment that these animals live in, so that they can live in there and we can go and enjoy them in their natural habitat. Now the kids absolutely loved Steve Irwin. We had a little chart that like ranked who the kids thought was their favorite person, and Steve Irwin was up there with Keanu Reeves. Like the kids love animals, probably because that they have animals in their some of them had animals in their lives themselves. Like we had a kid who had a fish, a couple with dogs and cats, and I think it really shows that. And also, children just love animals in general, so I think that is also a nice thing as well. And also, Colin had a picture of like sharks of him holding a shark and an alligator, so I think that like really like sold the idea to the kids that regardless of any animal like alligator and a cat or a fish, that they can be like friendly and gentle as well despite their ferocity and lethality.
Lastly, we have Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., who was a prominent figure during the civil rights movement and the civil rights era. So, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. was actually a figure that all of the kids, if not most of the kids, did know when we mentioned him. And we actually had some teachers tell us that they were just learning about Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. And some things that we talked about was how he was able to speak up for those that didn't have a voice or weren't listened to, and how he fought for equality, and because of him, that we can all be equal. And we also used some of his quotes. A lot of the kids did know the I Have a Dream speech, which was wonderful. And it was nice to see that the kids did have an understanding of who Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. was and did for America and for the Black community. So as you can see in this picture, we have students that are actually looking and at the pictures of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and reading the quotes. And I thought I'd take this time to explain what some of the kids knew. So when we asked questions about Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., a lot of the kids did know that he was unfortunately assassinated. That was probably the number one thing that they mentioned. But other kids did mention how he fought for equality of people of color that weren't able to speak for themselves. And it was just very nice to see how well informed the kids were on Dr. Martin Luther King. So lastly, we have our tally chart of who we wrote down, the 4 famous people that we used, and we asked the students who their favorite was, and they would tally down who their favorite was. So in first place was Steve Irwin, and we believe the reason why Steve Irwin won overall was because of the hook we used. So we did ask students if they had pets, so they were able to relate a little bit with the topic of Steve Irwin. And we also said, would you treat your pet the same as a snake, for example? So it was able to get the students kind of in tuned with Steve Irwin, and the pictures we used as well of him handling a tiger and him handling an alligator also helped a lot too. Unfortunately, in last place, it was Mr. Rogers, and I feel that the reason why he was in last place was because he wasn't as well known to the kids, because kids are growing up with different types of television and YouTube, so they're really not familiar with Mr. Rogers. But overall, it was a very, very fun experience. Thank you to our wonderful professor for allowing us to do this and get the experience of being around elementary school students, especially for some of us as school majors. So thank you.